So by this point, I've pretty much given up on trying to find a job. In case you don't know, I actually have two degrees. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree, both of them in STEM fields. They are in different fields though. But either way, I have a good in-demand degree. And a few years ago, I actually had a pretty decent job that I worked at for 3 or 4 years. And what was probably the biggest mistake of my entire life 4 years ago, at the beginning of 2020, or I guess actually at the end of 2019, I quit that job. It was a perfectly fine job. It wasn't like the best job in the world, but it was pretty good and it was in my field. And I was earning a decent amount of money. It wasn't six figures, but I was earning a decent living. Well, the reason I quit the job was I just really hated it. It was the work itself wasn't that bad, but it's just and this is what it always is with me. It's just the constant anxiety, the social anxiety. I mean, I feel like whenever I was at work, I had to pretty much act the whole time. Like I feel like I'm just not able to, and this is how I am around anybody. I'm just not able to really express myself comfortably. I just don't feel comfortable being myself because if people knew what I'm really thinking, I don't know, I would probably get fired for saying something not politically correct or what have you. I don't know. But whatever it is, I have just horrible social anxiety and it really affected my well-being, I guess you could say it just affected my happiness. I mean, I was kind of feeling depressed at that job. So I quit. And I'm thinking, well, by now I know, I mean, this is a total cope, just another one of my delusions. I thought, well, first of all, well, I can't just quit the job. I have to have a reason to quit the job. Not only to, I mean, I guess I'm kind of trying to justify it to myself, but also, to justify it to my parents or anybody I knows, or even, when I tell my supervisor that I'm going to quit, I need to have like a reason for doing so. Even though it doesn't really matter. I mean, I'll probably never see him again, but either way. So what I did was before I quit the job, I got accepted into a master's degree program for a different field, different than what I had my bachelor's degree in and different than the current job I was working, but into a field that I thought would be more bearable to me, something that I felt like might not make me quite as depressed to wake up at 6 in the morning to do every single day. And I guess I can just say it. I got my master's degree in computer science. So I well, I guess now I would say in the past tense, I wanted to be a software engineer or software developer, however you want to say it. So anyways, I quit my job 4 years ago. After about 2 years, 2.5 years, however long it took, I graduated with my master's degree. And then by the time I finished that degree, I was kind of burned out with programming. So at that point, I decided to, instead of looking for jobs like what a normal human being would do, like what a normal, reasonable person would do after they graduate, look for jobs, instead of doing that, I thought, God, I don't know why I'm so delusional, but I just always have these different copes, like these different ideas of like, I'm going to do this and then that'll fix my life. But anyways, I graduated and then I decided, I'm going to take 1 year. I'm going to give myself 1 year. I'm going to start a YouTube channel and I'm just going to work on that YouTube channel full time for a whole year. And I'm going to make that my career. In my head, I mean, I kind of knew like, it's not going to work out. There's a lot of luck involved in YouTube. I mean, I don't know. I've never made any money from YouTube before. So I don't know why I thought I understand everything about it. I thought I understand the algorithm. I understand, titles, thumbnails, how to make an engaging video. And I mean, truly, I do know a decent amount about like video editing and making thumbnails. I feel like I can make pretty good thumbnails and I can do some fairly complex stuff with video editing. But either way, if you're listening to this, you probably already know, yeah, that YouTube channel was pretty much a total failure. I did manage to get it monetized. Basically, I had one very successful video. I had one video that got about 1 million views. I mean, it still gets a decent amount of views to this day. I earn anywhere from like 50 to 150 bucks a month off that channel, just basically all off that one video. But that's nowhere near a career. I mean, I am, maybe this is just me coping, but in a way, I am kind of proud of myself that I was even able to, earn any amount of money. 100 bucks a month, 50 bucks a month, on the lower end. I mean, it's not bad for some side income. It's not a bad little side hustle. Of course, the thing was, I was working pretty much full time on this channel, and I don't know what it is, but all throughout school, throughout both degrees, I mean, it's just, I always feel like I was always the last person in class still working on the test. You know what I mean? I'm always just, I'm a slow worker. I don't know. And that's how it was at my old job. I think I did a decent job for the most part, other than anything involving communication, but I for sure was a slow worker. I remember my supervisor even once told me, I think I said something to him about, man, this project is taking me longer than I thought it would. And he, I thought he was going to say something like, yeah, well, that's just how it goes sometimes, or something like that, like somewhat comforting. But instead, God, it was so brutal. He said something like, well, I wouldn't worry about it too much. I mean, you are taking a little bit longer than I would have thought you would take at this point in your career. But he said something like that, like something like I was basically slow for how long I had been at the job. And didn't feel too good to hear that, but I kind of asked for, I mean, I guess I kind of set myself up for the feedback. So whatever. He didn't mean it maliciously. But anyways, yeah, so I quit my job 4 years ago. Graduated with a master's degree, with an in-demand degree, computer science, and tried my hand at YouTube, tried to make a career working for myself, being my own boss on that YouTube hustle, and that didn't work out for me. So yeah, here I am, unemployed for 4 years. I have at least like a 2 year long gap on my resume, or actually maybe like a year and a half, 2 year long gap on my resume where, all it is that I haven't been working, because at least for 2 years after I quit my job, I was in grad school. So that's, that makes sense. That looks okay on a resume. Like, yeah, I didn't have a job. I was in school, right? But after that, it's, I keep thinking like if I did, apply for jobs and I managed to get an interview, what am I going to tell them? They're going to ask. They're going to be like, what is this 2 year long gap on your resume? What have you been doing? I mean, I don't want to tell them, well, I tried to make a YouTube channel and, well, it didn't work out. Because the thing is, I think I'm not going to share my old YouTube channel. I want to keep this one separate from that. But what my older YouTube channel was, it did kind of verge on a little bit on edginess to some degree. It's basically, I don't want that. I can't have that on my resume. Certain topics for a YouTube channel would have been fine, but the YouTube channel that I did make is not really something I can talk about in professional interviews. It's, of course, not related to programming or computer science or computers at all. So it doesn't help me in that sense, but it's also just the kind of edgy material, not something you would even want to talk about in the workplace. So yeah, I don't even know what I would say. And to top it all off, it's like, man, the idea, just the thought of going into a job interview, just the thought of a phone screen, talking to some HR lady on the phone, answering questions about why do I think I'd be a good fit for the company? And it's the behavioral questions in an interview that really get to me. I can answer technical questions. I can talk about, because I've done, little side projects. I've made, various websites, programs and stuff. I'm technically, the technical skills for being a software developer, I have it. Like, I could do a good job, and I think I can fight through my social anxiety enough during an interview to get that point across in the technical portions. But when it comes to questions like, explain a time where you had a conflict with a coworker and blah, 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 or explain a time where you learned a valuable lesson working on a project or whatever. I think you all know what I'm talking about with these behavioral questions in interviews, and it's just it's just hard, man. And I remember I had a few interviews before when I was getting ready to graduate with my bachelor's degree, and for the most part, they were all just brutal, just completely brutal. Whenever they ask me these behavioral questions, I just blank out. I remember one time getting asked a question. I forget what it was, but it was one of those questions along the lines of describe a time when X happened and then you did X and what you learned or whatever. And I just didn't know what to say. So I sat there silently for a while until the I basically just froze until the person interviewing me actually said something. They were like, well, I don't remember what they said, but basically they said something because I had been silent for so long. And then I just said, I asked, I asked, what's the question again? Which was a stupid thing to ask because then it's like, anyways, they repeated the question and I sat there silent for, a few seconds again. And I just said, I don't know. I just said, I don't know because I could not think of an answer to the question. And that right there is very, very brutal. I mean, that's how you know it's over in an interview when you're not even able to answer a basic question. Because I do feel like these behavioral questions they're not that difficult. Like when I read, when I look up a list of behavioral interview questions online and I read through them, they're not that hard to answer. But when I'm put on the spot, I don't know. And in fact, my old job that I used to have, the way that, I mean, I feel like I barely even got hired for that job because I remember I met my future supervisor at the career fair at my college. And, we had a bit of a conversation. I gave him my resume there. And then a couple days after that, I sent him an email, just something generic, just saying something like, thanks for talking to me. I think I could make a great employee, yada, yada, yada. And I remember he responded back that same day and he said basically, sorry, we already hired somebody. Well, fast forward, I think maybe like 2 months after that, and I get another email from my future supervisor and he says, well, basically what happened is the guy that they hired just didn't show up for the first day of work and then they weren't able to get into contact with him. So I guess they were kind of like rushed and panicked at that point. So they call me in for an interview, and I don't even know if they interviewed anyone else. That interview, I think, went decently. I mean, I got the job. I don't remember anything particularly bad about that interview. I got the job, but yeah, I mean, I don't even know if they interviewed anybody else. So I really don't know because it seemed like they were in a rush to hire somebody. And yeah, so I worked at that job for 3 or 4 years. And man, I did not like it. I mean, I just felt like by the time I had that job, I was, full on bald, full on just sub 5. And when you're sub 5, if you're sub 5 and you're listening to this, you already know, but when you're sub 5, when you're a sub 5 male, especially, you're basically subhuman. That's how people treat you. So, I mean, I felt like I didn't get any respect at that job or anywhere else I go, really. And man, I remember I used to work a fast food job for a few years back, I think between the ages of like 20 and 23. And well, that job was really nerve-wracking. Sometimes when I had to like work up front, I basically had to work as a cashier and interact with people all day. But even after I got used to that, that wasn't so bad. And most of the time I just worked in the back, worked in the kitchen. I basically didn't really have to talk to anybody. I mean, it was smooth sailing. It was pretty easy. But the thing about that job, obviously, I made minimum wage. So, which back then was, I don't know, it was like $8 an hour, something like that. Oh, but yeah, the thing about that job was that while I was at that job, I actually got treated like a person. And I started going bald around the age of 19. By the time I was 23, which was like at the tail end of that fast food job, I was, the Norwood Reaper had come to collect. You know what I'm saying? The Norwood Reaper had collected his fair share at that point. I was pretty bad off already, but everyone at that job had to wear a hat. So, Uh, so, a lot of my coworkers, I think, and, just regular customers coming in, they didn't even know I was a bald cell. So I probably, they treated me like I was a regular human being. To some extent, I mean, they treated me kind of like I was a 20-something-year-old man working at a fast food joint. But at the same time, I feel like I got treated better there than I get treated now. I feel like I got treated better as a fast food employee wearing a hat than I get treated now in public when I go out. And I mean, nowadays, it doesn't matter if I'm wearing a hat because, for one, wearing a hat is complete cope. At this point, everyone knows I'm bald. Everyone can tell I'm bald, even if I'm wearing a hat. But that doesn't even matter because I'm old. I'm 35 years old. I look old. I don't look good. I haven't aged well. If anything, I look older than I am. And I always have looked older than I am, which I thought was cool when I was a teenager. But now that I'm 35, looking like I'm 45, it's not so great anymore. But yeah, I mean, I guess the reason I wanted to make this video is just to talk about how I've pretty much given up. I mean, at this point, it's like, I think I would just be coping to say that I would ever have any hope of working a regular full-time job. I just don't think I could do it. For one, I don't think I could make it through an interview. For one, I don't know if I could even get an interview if I did apply for jobs, because to be honest, I mean, I never had any internships in my field, in the field I would be searching for jobs in. I only ever had one job before, I had the fast food job, but I only ever had like one real job using my degree, and I wasn't even good at it. So I wouldn't feel like my supervisor at that job would be a very good reference. I don't think he would want to be listed as a reference for me. I just get that vibe. And I mean, just the thought of, because as it is, I mean, I get pretty good sleep. It sucks. It's depressing because I stay up as late as I want and go to bed and sleep in as late as I want. It sucks to, man, and just talking about my life right now, like, it puts me in pain, honestly. Honestly, it sucks. But yeah, what was I talking about? Right, so just the idea of, let's say I get a job, right? Let's say I manage to get a job. Do I really want to go back to waking up at 6 a.m., to take a shower? I don't get to, enjoy my shower. Because, I like to stand in the shower for a little bit. I don't like to hurry, but do I really want to get up? Do I really want to go back to waking up to an alarm at 6 a.m. just to take a quick shower, get in a car, and drive in rush hour traffic just to go to some shitty office where the air conditioning's probably too cold, where I'm required to at least attempt to make small talk lest I be shunned by everybody and promptly fired, where I have to sit in a little cubicle or at a little desk in an open office, constantly surrounded by the eyes of all my coworkers or anybody else in the building, constantly surrounded by their eyes, their watchful eyes, their listening ears. I can't stand it, man. Just the thought, it's going to give me a panic attack just thinking about this. Everything about working a job is brutal. And I guess I'm trying to explain it, but at the same time, I know it's pointless. There's not really a good way to explain how brutal it is just existing in society as a super high inhibition sub-5 male. I mean, at least back in the day when I was like my late teenage years, when I actually, for a brief period of time, was a kind of good-looking, in-shape guy, not bald, didn't have a care in the world, didn't even know I was going bald yet. I had so much potential. I had so much hope. If my younger self could meet me now, I don't even know. I really don't even know. But yeah, I mean, at this point, I feel like I just don't even have the confidence to think I could even function in an interview, or even much less function in the actual workplace after I get the job. And I know some of you are probably thinking, well, if you're looking for jobs as a software developer, you should look into remote jobs. You should try to find a remote job. And yeah, I mean, I have looked around a little bit online. I would love to work a remote job. I would love to work a remote job and not have to actually go into an office. But I don't know if y'all know this, but to get a remote job is, especially as your first job, 100% remote, you have to have a very good resume. You have to have a very good resume for an employer to take the chance on hiring you for your very first job as a 100% remote. And I just don't see that happening. Plus, like the vast majority of jobs in my area are not remote. They might offer like hybrid remote, but they're certainly not 100% remote. So yeah, I just don't really think I have much of a chance of getting a 100% remote job. So yeah, it sucks.